Absolutely. So happy to chip in since I'm the representative of the tech providers here in the room. So of course, data is our topic. A couple of weeks ago, or months, 2 months ago, I was at the Cascale conference, and we supported in a research study regarding supply chain transparency and traceability. And there, we found out that actually less than 50% of the brands today have visibility beyond tier 1. So to be exact, it's 48% only. And less than 20% of the brands have visibility beyond tier 2. Right? So we are still very, very far away from real supply chain do you still hear me? Oh, yeah. From real supply chain transparency. I do believe, though, that the outdoor industry is a bit more advanced than many other verticals within the fashion industry. I think historically, I mean, for you, the performance of the materials and the components that you're using is so important that you have to have a close relationship with the material providers. So that gives you a great advantage in terms of supply chain transparency. When we look into other verticals, more on the fast fashion side and so on, I think they don't need that visibility in terms of quality. So that's the status quo from our side.
For me, I think that what we're living through right now is what you could call an inflection point. The work that we've been doing in supply chain traceability for the last 8 years or so very often was done, as Bettina said, manually. Excel spreadsheets, emails, calls, audits, etc. And that was very often done for due diligence, either to back up your content claims, or else it was done also for strategy, for internal strategy, trying to have an impact in your supply chain. Now things are very different. Now we are faced with a whole raft of regulations. We're obviously focused a lot on the EU, but this is something that it's global, and it will spread. Also, the positive impact of tech is something that will much improve the efficiency of all of this process. And now that we're just at the baby steps of this. So I think that we will see a lot of change within the next 5 years and 10 years. It will look nothing like what we saw in the previous 10.
Right now?
Yeah, I mean, we had a client dinner with a commission representative the other day, and even she acknowledged that there has been, she called it fire hose of sustainability regulation. So the last 2-3 years were like full of new regulation, which sometimes was contradictory, which isn't helpful. So a big part of what we're doing is helping brands figure out how they can align these requirements. And then we've got additional geopolitical developments. So in the US, there's a big ESG backlash. So if brands are active globally, they have to align their go-to-market strategy, their compliance efforts with very contradictory requirements. And so that's why we always work in cross-country teams for these matters. So Melanie's in Brussels, Gabby is in London, I'm in Berlin. Then we've got the colleagues in the US, because otherwise you won't be able to develop a strategy that works globally. And that's what brands need. You can't just go along different compliance setups in the US and in Europe. So there's different ways of achieving that, and I think that's one of the big challenges in it. A tiny little light at the end of the tunnel, I think, is the new commission. The new commission has just been confirmed. The commissioners have been confirmed with, I think, the slimmest majority ever. But we have a new commission. It's promised simplification. Simplification is number one on their agenda, in particular with regard to sustainability reporting, sustainability requirements. And they also want to push competitiveness of Europe and close the gap in innovation. So that closes the circle to our topic. To be completely honest, walking through these halls, there are quite a few generic statements about being eco-friendly, having zero impact on the environment, being sustainable, which is completely understandable because I think the brands are doing a lot to achieve these goals. However, the Commission has come to the conclusion after a study in 2022 that many of these claims might be overstating things, might be misleading, might not be completely transparent or not complete. So the customers might be misled in their decision that is, according to that study, driven by sustainability considerations, right? Customers do want to buy sustainable products. And that's why the Commission came up with these two proposals. The greenwashing directive is already in force. The green claims one is still in the process. Both of them need to be transposed into national laws. So it's going to happen in 2026. So now some of our clients lean back and say, well, that's a long time to go. And I tend to say, well, look, I don't think it is. Because first of all, if you want to change your approach to the market, your labeling, your statements, that's going to take time, right, to turn that around. And the other thing is, it's not just these EU regulations that commit you and request you to be transparent. There is national legislation as well. And there have been court cases on this. In particular, your industry, like the sports and outdoor industries, have been in the focus. I mean, if you've probably heard about the Danish regulator coming down on Decathlon and H&M for stating, it was just two words, it was eco-design and conscious. In particular, the conscious one, I was like, wow, that's a bit harsh. But that's the new thrust of the new directives, right? They want to have transparency, substantiation. There has to be something behind it. It has to be as concrete as possible. It cannot be generic. These generic terms of eco-friendly, green, sustainable, that's going to be prohibited, and that's what the regulators already now look at.
So again, the main obligations are to assess, minimize, and end adverse impacts, establish a complaint mechanism, and also put in place a climate obligation plan in line with the Paris Agreement. A very important point is that this directive is risk-based, meaning that you, or in general, companies will not be asked to end all adverse impacts straight away. They will be able to prioritize based, again, on a risk approach.
So what can we do? One main thing that, and we can see many solutions that, relating to this, is we try to evolve the supply chain, try to move from a linear to a circular supply chain. And we can do that by attaching remake, reuse, and recycle to the end of life of the supply chain. By doing this, we're not only reducing the impacts and dependencies of the last stage for the end of life, but we also reduce the impacts and dependency across the whole life cycle, as less material is being used and then less is produced as we reuse, remake, and recycle.